let's jump a little bit back to your research because there are two other topics open that I would like to understand a little bit better. You mentioned the term extracellular matrix and its role in aging. Can you give me a little bit more background information? What does that have to do with aging and longevity?
Yeah, I mean, the extracellular matrix per se, has not really been studied really a lot about it because, people have been looking at collagens, as I mentioned, these proteins that are outside there, and they form this network. And they also accumulate a lot of damage because this collagen can get sugar attached to it, right? And these sugar attachments then start to cross-link. And when this happens, it's like cross-linking of the matrix. So the cross-link of the matrix, you notice when you eat like some older meat versus some younger meat, right? So you see like the aged, right, old cow versus a younger cow, right? You can, just from the stiffness when you chew it, you can see this cross-linking. And also it's very problematic, for example, diabetic patients who have a lot of sugar in their blood, right? If the sugar adds them to these collagens, they have, for example, problems with wound healing, right? So that's a major complications. The other thing is that, the extracellular matrix has been studied before, except in disease mechanisms, meaning that, for example, if collagen is produced, but just not really integrated in matrix, but just produced like a lot, which is called fibrosis, right? We usually have inflammation, some inflammatory response, and you have lots of that, right? So fibrosis is, at least in the US, there was one study suggesting it's, 45% of all deaths is due to fibrosis, right? And so if you understand the regulation of the extracellular matrix or the deregulation or things go wrong, then you can attack that. And the last part that is also very important is for cancer, right? So each cancer cells, they just change the extracellular matrix, so they make the stiffness, they change everything, and then when this cancer starts wants to migrate, right, to metastasize, it has to break the extracellular matrix. So there's a strong interactions there. And the real cool thing is what we found and others found in our research is that we can tell you what cancer type it is just based on the extracellular matrix, because each of them forms a new matrix. And it gets even more complicated that the inside and the outside are very well connected. So your cells are attached to the matrix with some receptors, right? And so they can pull on it. They pull on the matrix, and it gives a feedback. And so there's a inside-out signaling and outside-in signaling, which really determines homeostasis, right? And so your cell. And when we look just at the extracellular matrix composition, we could say this cell is healthy or it's diseased, just based what it is making, right? It's such a strong interaction. We don't understand how really that works, and so we're on there, how the signaling works. But it's just remarkable how intrinsically they're linked with each other, which makes sense. We're a multicellular organism, right? And so we are trying to figure this out on a systems biological way, where we use proteomics and describe all these proteins out there and call these change in the extracellular matrix, we call it matriotype, which the extracellular matrix is the matrixome, and the snapshot of the composition of the matrix we call matriotype. And so with that, we hope to, use this also for as a biomarker for clinical investigation, so to speak. Can we use this one to say, well, this is a disease cell or a transforming cell or a healthy cell or changes there, or which cancer type there is. From the basic research, we really trying to figure out how this works, and we made some great progress in terms of longevity, right? So we know that so all these longevity interventions, going back to C. elegans, for example, they require certain key collagens to extend the lifespan. So if you can double the lifespan, certain collagens are really required for this. And the cool thing is that we can overexpress certain collagens and it's sufficient to increase lifespan. Now, if something is required and sufficient, it's suggests some sort of mechanism. And it took us 5 years now to figure out how this works, but we basically figured it out. And it is that remember those extra matrix, right, out there is linked with these integrins, right, and that signal in there. And it's called, this signaling is called mechanotransduction, because it transduces force measurements into the cell, because there are cables that are linked, like these actin and tubulins, they're linked to your nucleus and they pull on your nucleus, and that changes gene transcription. So this is this mechanotransduction, and we found this is an essential process for all these longevity interventions. And the cool thing is that not only it's from the extra matrix to the cell, but also two different organs to another extra matrix. So it's all like linked on a whole organismal level. And so what would that mean for us humans? It means that your organs are surrounded by an extra matrix, right? And so not only is the extra matrix important for the stability of the organ, right? Because if that damage is happening, then the organs get damaged, and that could lead to death, right? And you have to absorb a lot of shock when you jump on your knees or your back or your organs inside. You have to think they have also cushion, but also it's important that these changes, these mechanical changes, give an information to the cell what's actually happening, and they start to remodel it, right? So if you do more exercise, then your muscle grows, the extra matrix grows, right? And this is a dynamic system, and it works very well when you're young, but it's just completely also, again, decomposes when you're old. And so the key is to figure out how can we now maintain these connective tissues, these interactions. It's the opening game, which is fun, because you can get a lot of insight with